The Washington Commanders have already done a lot of work this offseason, but there is more to be done to find out where they need to approach the next wave of their offseason. We got to project a 53-man roster, and we're doing that and more on today's episode of Locked On Commanders.
Your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into this episode of Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day every day. And don't forget that you can subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you're getting this podcast. And you can continue this conversation with me by becoming a Locked On Commanders insider. Just go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders and sign up today. From there, you'll be an insider. You'll get news analysis, inside information, one-on-one messages with me, all kinds of just fun stuff going on there in the private text messaging atmosphere. So go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders and text me today. I'm David Harrison, credentialed member of the media covering the Washington Commanders for CommanderCountry.com, a part of Sports Illustrated's FanNation. I'm here with you every Monday through Friday, along with our everydayers. And as always, I appreciate your continued support for the show. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, use the code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your first purchase. On today's episode, we are going to dive into a mock draft Monday and see how many more holes we can fill for the Washington Commanders. But first, we got to talk about the holes they already filled, how well they filled them, how permanently they filled them, to figure out where this team needs to go moving forward. And to do that, we're going to take an updated look at what the Washington Commanders roster looks like, because following the first wave of free agency, we've got 15 new members of the Washington Commanders, most of them confirmed, not all of them yet confirmed and signed and all that stuff. We've talked to quite a few of them. I think we did 9 press conferences alone on Friday or on Thursday. I can't remember all the days that we did all these. And then we've got more coming up on Monday. So plenty of new Commanders faces to get to know coming up over the coming days. Running down the list real quick: tight end Zach Ertz, defensive end Dorrance Armstrong, center Tyler Biadasz, linebacker Frankie Luvu, running back Austin Eckler, kicker Brandon McManus, guard Nick Allegretti, defensive end Cleveland Farrell, quarterback Marcus Mariota, defensive end Dante Fowler, long snapper Tyler Ott, safety Jeremy Chin, linebackers Bobby Wagner and Anthony Pittman, and cornerback Noah Igbenogany. He was a Sunday edition, reportedly agreeing to a deal with the Washington Commanders. And then the Commanders have also re-signed 3 players: safety Jeremy Reeves, wide receiver Jamison Crowder, defensive end F.A. Obata, and of course, they've traded quarterback Sam Howell to the Seattle Seahawks in exchange for draft capital swaps and all that stuff. We'll get to that impact here in just a minute. So currently the Washington Commanders have $62.37 million in cap space according to Over the Cap. However, not all contracts are being reported. So I estimate that they've got probably more closer to like $40 million in cap space. When you take off $10 million to sign the draft class, you're really looking at about $30 million. And again, that's an estimate, somewhat of an overestimate. We want to be a little bit more conservative on that number. Contract data, there's currently 11 of 18 players updated. Since the last time we did this update, we've gotten contract information according to Over the Cap from our on tight end Zach Ertz. It's a 1-year, $3 million deal. $1.96 million of it is guaranteed. $750,000 of it is a signing bonus, and he counts for $2.44 million against this year's salary cap. Defensive end Cleveland Farrell is also on a 1-year deal, $3.75 million total, $3.75 million against the cap. And Jeremy Reeves' contract is a 2-year, $6 million deal. He will count for $2.13 million against the cap this season. $1.5 million of his money is a signing bonus. So given all that information, the latest count, we've got 66 players projected currently on the 2024 NFL roster for the Washington Commanders. They've got 9 draft picks. That gives you 75 players, which means they're 15 players away from fleshing out a 90-man roster. Now, given the fact that most teams sign somewhere between 10 to 20 undrafted free agents, theoretically, you could potentially see the Washington Commanders be finished with free agency right now and kind of roll into the draft season and all that stuff with those 15 open spots. More than likely, I think you'll probably see at least 2 more additions to the roster, whether it's a re-signing or a signing of a new player. But at the end of the day, when training camp is done, preseason is done, they're not taking 90 dudes into the regular season with them. They will take 53 of them. So I went ahead and sat down and kind of worked out a mock 53-man roster so that we could mock draft Monday this a little bit more accurately. Let's get a clear picture of what we're looking at for the Washington Commanders before we head into a mock draft Monday episode. I am going to write this 53-man projection for CommanderCountry.com. So if you want to see it in front of you on the screen, just keep an eye out there. I'm going to write it as one article, but it might get split into two. I can't really tell you what my publisher is going to do. Probably going to split it into two, to be honest with you. So keep an eye out for that, dropping on Monday at various times for the 53-man roster projection. And again, this is not a prediction for what's going to happen, because obviously there's more players to be added, but more so a tool to look at what the state of the Commanders looks like right now, so you can kind of get a better feel for where we think they should go moving forward. So on offense, your quarterbacks are Marcus Mariota and Jake Fromm. Running backs, Brian Robinson Jr., Austin Eckler, Chris Rodriguez Jr. Wide receivers, Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, De'Ami Brown, Jamison Crowder, Dax Milne, Mitchell Tinsley, and Casimir Allen. That's 6 or 7 of those guys. Again, 53-man rosters. You could slant one way or the other on a couple of positions. Tight end, Zach Ertz, John Bates, Cole Turner, Armani Rogers. Left tackles, Andrew Wiley, Braden Daniels. Left guards, Nick Allegretti, Chris Paul. Centers, Tyler Biadasz and Ricky Stromberg. Right guards, Sam Cosmi and Mason Brooks. Right tackle, Trent Scott and Alex Akingbulu. And yes, I did shift Andrew Wiley over to left tackle in this 53-man projection because, again, it's not really a hard prediction. But bottom line is you want your top tackle as your blindside tackle, and that right now is Andrew Wiley. So I moved him over to the left. Again, not a prediction. Don't get too crazy about it. Defense, your defensive ends, Dorrance Armstrong, Andre Jones Jr., KJ Henry, Dante Fowler Jr., Cleveland Farrell, and F.A. Obata. Your defensive tackles, John Allen, Deron Payne, John Ridgway, Fidarius Mathis. Linebackers, Frankie Louvu, Bobby Wagner, first foremost, of course, Jamin Davis and Anthony Pittman. Your cornerbacks, Benjamin St. Juste, Christian Holmes, Emmanuel Forbes, Noah Igbenogany. Quan Martin, I have as a corner right now. Tariq Castro Field. Safeties, Percy Butler, Jeremy Reeves, Jeremy Chin, and Derek Forrest. And your specialists, Tyler Rott, your long snapper, Brandon McManus, your kicker, Tress Way is your punter. That's 53 names. Again, if you want to see it in front of your eyes for yourself, check out CommanderCountry.com, dropping on Monday throughout the day. So when you look at those names, you look at that 53-man roster projection, your biggest remaining needs to me really look like starting quarterback, number one, and we will obviously get to that very quickly in our mock draft. Offensive tackle, you need a pass protector out there. And as you saw as you heard from our offensive tackle projections, not the greatest position group on the board. I know some people are very, I don't say upset, but a little disappointed that maybe they didn't go harder after finding replacements there. Tyron Smith heading to the New York Jets since the last time we spoke. Defensive end, I don't think you're solidified there. I still think you need to find your long-term solutions there. Certainly possibly could be a long-term solution in the mix in those names, but I don't think you can just kind of call it done, let the cement dry on that whole thing. A red zone, taller option, wide receiver. That's something that we're going to talk about later as well. Cornerback, I think, is still a position they could address, even though Noah Igbenogany is coming in. Tight end, Zach Ertz obviously is a little bit long in the tooth, and I don't think you have a Cliff Kingsbury tight end, true to form, proven in the depth chart behind him. Nickel corner or free safety. I put it that way because Quan Martin is a nickel corner or a free safety. So if you bring in a nickel corner or a free safety, then you can move Quan to either one of those positions. Strong safety, Jeremy Chin is on a short contract. Derek Forrest is coming off a pretty big injury, so I don't think you necessarily call that secure. Linebacker of the future, obviously you love Bobby Wagner. I have a lot of excitement for Frankie Louvu, Jamin Davis, certainly an opportunity to prove some potential, but I think you still want to grab a guy if you can and put him in reserve and start developing him behind the scenes. A receiving running back of the future, right? I look at Brian Robinson Jr. as kind of your all-purpose back right now. Austin Eckler is more your receiver type. Chris Rodriguez Jr. is your power type. So Austin Eckler being kind of the guy with the most tread off the tires, and think you need to find an eventual replacement for him. And look, kicker of the future, Brandon McManus, not a spring chicken. And I hate to say it, guys, but punter of the future, Tress Way is getting a little bit older as well. And this team, or not this team, but Adam Peters, like I said in previous episodes, every day, as you'll remember, teams that Adam Peters has been in the front office with Denver Broncos, New England Patriots, San Francisco 49ers. They have had a tendency to pick kickers and punters in the middle of the NFL drafts. I do not have any kickers or punters in my mock draft. I think that's maybe something they do on down the line if they do go that way at some point in time. But we do have a mock draft Monday full of picks, and I got 3 trades that I'm dropping in this thing this week. So come back for that. Coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode of Locked On Commanders is brought to you by Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, Now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claims as of Q1 2024 validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. Continuing on now, today's episode of Locked On Commanders. Thanks again for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day every day. Everydayers, make sure you come back tomorrow. We will have more press conference insight, more information. We're going to be talking about a lot of things dropping over the weekend and over the week for the Washington Commanders. And depending on the news cycle, we might actually start taking a look at some of these new names in a deeper fashion. So come back tomorrow, more content, of course, coming up, leading all the way through the week. And then next week, we will be in Orlando for the NFL League meetings kicking off on Sunday. Monday and Tuesday are kind of the hottest days. For that, we will have media sessions with a media session with head coach Dan Quinn on Tuesday. So, we're going to be asking about some of the new names. We're going to be asking about trading Sam Howell, all kinds of good stuff coming from Coach Quinn next week. So a lot of stuff coming down the pipe. Who said anything about an offseason? As you know, Locked On has also launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel, Locked On Sports Today. And baseball fans, you can mark your calendars for March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern for the best Major League Baseball season preview coming exclusively to Locked On Sports Today. Find it on March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Mock Draft Monday here on Locked On Commanders. And we got some trades involved here, guys, but we do not have a trade at the number 2 overall pick. We are sticking and we are picking quarterback Jaden Daniels out of LSU. Now, as some of you have noticed, insiders and not insiders combined, I do subscribe to the school of thought of trading back is better than most ideas, right? I kind of look at this as, especially with the number 2 overall pick, if you are not just 1,000% convinced that this guy is going to be the guy to lead your franchise into the next era of greatness, trade back, collect picks, get more guys who as in concert might lead your team into the next era of greatness. But the situation has to be right? So context matters. We're not trading in this situation because a lot of the experts seem to think the New England Patriots are going to be rather trading back, which I don't agree with. I kind of look at this and I look at the Patriots and say, you don't have a quarterback of the future. You got Jacoby Brissett in there right now, which is great, but you don't have a quarterback of the future. So again, picking number 3, you kind of have to pick a quarterback, I would think, which is where the Washington Commanders are. You don't have a quarterback of the future. Number 2, you kind of want to pick a quarterback. So if the Patriots do trade back, right, they aren't prioritizing quarterback in number 3, obviously, so they're not going to be trading up. If they're willing to trade back, they're not going to be trading up, which means if you do a trade back for the Washington Commanders, you're talking about going to at least pick number 4, which I don't see Arizona doing realistically. I don't see the Chargers trading up from number 5, which basically takes you to the New York Giants, who certainly might trade up from number 6 to go get the quarterback of their future. But that's risky because if they trade up to number 2 and take a quarterback, now you've got picks 3, 4, and 5, and you're needing one of those quarterbacks to stick for those 3 picks. And the odds of the Cardinals or the Chargers trading back with a quarterback hungry team, I think becomes very, very likely. So going back to number 6, you're probably not getting one of those top 3 quarterbacks. And now without a real solid quarterback option, no disrespect to Marcus Mariota, I just don't think that this new coaching regime wants to start off their time with Marcus Mariota as a starting quarterback. So if you trade back to number 6, it's very possible that you're looking at J.J. McCarthy or Bo Nix as a quarterback you're drafting in the first round. And I don't think either of those guys necessarily would be benefiting too greatly from coming out right out the box as an NFL starting quarterback. Could be wrong, and certainly maybe the Commanders should be thinking that way. But because I'm thinking this way, that I think if you're going to start a quarterback this year, it's got to be Caleb, it's got to be Jaden, or it's got to be Drake. And I kind of don't really like the idea of starting Drake year 1 either. So because of that, and because of the risk involved in trading back and where you would have to trade back if the Patriots are not interested in taking quarterback in number 3, like the experts seem to think they aren't, you have to stick at number 2, and you got to take Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels, our pick at number 2. Comeback number 36, edge rusher Chop Robinson out of Penn State somehow is still on the board. So there's a couple of offensive tackle prospects here that we like, but both of them have some question marks around them. So instead, we take the edge rusher that we know where we're going to put him, we know how we're going to use them, and we get Chop Robinson. Pick number 40 in the second round. Fortunately for us, both of those tackles still available. One of them, Jordan Morgan, out of Arizona, has been projected by some to move inside, but certainly can still play tackle or at least come in and give you some tackle looks. So we take him, even though there are some question marks there. So we take tackle Jordan Morgan. Number 67 overall in the third round, we take Kyrie Jackson, the cornerback out of Oregon. His size and his athleticism alone make him a super intriguing prospect, but his fluidity and his success in man coverage in college make him a great third round pick. Then we have our first trade of this mock draft. We are trading with the Arizona Cardinals. In this trade, the Washington Commanders, we're going to get pick number 71, pick number 104, and pick number 186. So we're getting a third, fourth, and a sixth round pick in this trade. And we're going to send Arizona both of our remaining third round picks. So 78 and 100. Remember, we're getting 71. So we're not trading out of the third round. We're also going to give Arizona our fifth round pick and a 2025 sixth. So we send 4 picks for 3. We move up 7 spots in the third. We get a fourth round pick where we didn't have one previously, and we move into the fifth round as well. And with that 71st overall pick, we take offensive tackle Blake Fisher. So we're taking tackles in the second and third round. Blake Fisher coming out of Notre Dame is a right tackle. We're going to test him out at left tackle along with Jordan Morgan. Hopefully one of those two guys hits. And then if one of those two rookies needs to sit, Andrew Wiley will fill in at the other starting tackle spot for the time being. We have another trade after the 71st pick. We're trading with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And in this one, Washington, we're going to get 2 fourth-round picks, number 114 and 116, so pretty close together. We're also going to get number 212 in the 6th round. Jacksonville is going to move up to our 104th pick that we have now from our previous trade. We're also going to give them a 5th rounder and a 6th rounder in exchange. And with pick number 114, once we get back on the clock, we're taking tight end Cade Stover out of Ohio State to fill in behind Zach Ertz and compete with John Bates, Cole Turner, and Amani Rogers for playing time. Before we get on, or when we get on the clock at 116, we're trading again. This is our third and final trade. So we're trading up twice, trading back twice, trading up once. We're trading with the Atlanta Falcons. Washington is going to get pick number 143 in the 5th, 187 in the 6th, and a 2025 6th round pick from Atlanta. And in exchange, Atlanta gets pick number 116 in the 4th round. At 143, we're taking linebacker Michael Barrett out of Michigan. Probably come in as our 4th linebacker, compete with Anthony Pittman. Maybe as that 4th linebacker, but bottom line is we're looking to develop him behind the scenes, give him some special teams exposure as a rookie and as a young linebacker, and potentially maybe move up the depth chart later on down the line. 6th round pick, 187. I'm taking Sunner Henner Norzad out of Penn State. I think he's an underrated guy, 6th round pick. Certainly could take a flyer on a guy who could develop into a solid player later on down the road. Pick number 212, we're taking safety Trey Taylor out of Air Force. He is a cover safety, free safety type of guy. 7th round, 222, we're taking running back Isaiah Davis out of South Dakota State. So with those picks and compared to our needs, we filled our starting quarterback need with the 2nd overall pick with Jaden Daniels. We got 2 tackles in Jordan Morgan out of Arizona and Blake Fisher out of Notre Dame. We got another defensive end with Chop Robinson out of Penn State, who could become one of our long-term defensive end solutions. We addressed the cornerback room again with Kyrie Jackson. So we got Emmanuel Forbes, Benjamin St. Juste, Kyrie Jackson, Noah Igbenogany, and some of those other guys to compete for those cornerback spots. I think now we've got a really good competition going. We added a tight end in Cade Stover out of Ohio State, a free safety in Trey Taylor out of Air Force. Now, I don't think a 6th round free safety is going to just allow us to release Quan Martin to be a nickel corner. More on that in a bit. Linebacker to develop, and Michael Barrett out of Michigan. Receiving running back to develop out of Isaiah Davis out of South Dakota State. So that's what we got. Where are we still missing? Well, obviously we didn't get a kicker of the future or punter of the future. That should be okay. But we also didn't get a slot corner. We didn't get a starting free safety to allow Quan to move down in the slot, and we didn't find a taller receiver. We'll talk about some options there coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode of Locked On Commanders is brought to you by Game Time, who says you shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. And with Game Time, you get a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all your sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. Wednesday night, my wife and I went and caught Bryan Adams at the Eagle Bank Arena in Fairfax, Virginia. It was a great show. Got to talk to him a little bit after the show as well. So all in all, no complaints, and Game Time helped us get it. It's Game Time makes it easy for you to find and buy tickets to every kind of event in your area. And they've got deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after some of them start. It is the place for you to find last minute seats if suddenly you have some free time and some money. And the Game Time guarantee means you're always going to get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less money, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create your account and redeem the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Commanders, it's a mock draft Monday. In order to execute our mock draft, we had to restack the projected 53-man roster, and we found out we needed a starting quarterback, some tackles, some edge rushers, taller receiver, cornerback help, tight end, nickel corner or a free safety, maybe a strong safety, a linebacker of the future, receiving back of the future, kicker and punter of the future as well. And through our mock draft, we are still left with kickers and punters of the future, which is, I think, is okay. But we could also use a slot corner, a free safety, and we did not find that taller receiver. And really, when you talk about the free safety and the slot corner, it's really one or the other, right? You don't really need both, because Quan Martin certainly showed some potential, I think, in both areas, and he did better as a free safety late. So you kind of like to find that nickel if you could, but you can only find what's available on the shelves, right? So really, you were looking for one of those. And the question is, on the strong safety side, is Derek Forrest going to be a free safety or a strong safety with this new group? I kind of look at him as a guy that can replace Cam Curl pretty well and cover better and maybe stack the box just as well as Cam. And then with Quan Martin back there as a free safety, or if you can find one to draft or sign, then maybe your secondary is looking a little bit healthier. Jeremy Chin is very clearly a strong safety. So I think with that, you're looking at Derek Forrest as being a free safety potentially, if he's healthy. And because you don't know about the health and how he's going to bounce back from that injury, you still have to call that position a little bit open. So I went digging for some available defensive backs still on the free agent market here for the second wave, as we call it, in free agency, and in no particular order. Although I will tell you that my favorite option, honestly, is to bring in Julian Blackmon, who, as of the time of this recording, is still a free agency. Third round pick in 2020, turns 26 in August. So he's still very young. He started 46 of the 50 games that he's played. He did tear his Achilles in 2021, but has been able to bounce back from that. Had 4 interceptions in 2023 and was not credited with having given up a touchdown pass, according to Pro Football Focus. Coming from the Colts program, now the Colts folks that I know and trust say that he did move into more of a strong safety role in 2023, but he did still have 300-plus snaps as a free safety, according to PFF. So a little bit of versatility never hurt anybody. Still fairly young. Already coming back from that injury a couple seasons. So I think that's a good option to look at if you're the Washington Commanders. Julian Blackmon, another. And then again, he's a safety. So then you can move Quan Martin potentially back to that nickel spot. Another little bit older veteran, Justin Simmons, turns 31 in November. Denver Broncos players from Manassas, Virginia. So he'd be a homecoming 2-time Pro Bowler. Might be looking for a little bit more money, which might be why he hasn't signed again as of the time of this recording. 5 or more interceptions in 3 of the last 4 seasons for Justin Simmons. And then finally, Patrick Peterson, the elder statesman, right? Turns 34 in July, but he had 225 slot snaps in 2023 for the Steelers. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of corners that have made the shift to free safety, so maybe he goes back there. A little bit more of a unknown. Once you bring him in, you kind of have to figure out where he's going to go. Was with Cliff Kingsbury in Arizona. Now, Patrick Peterson's departure from Arizona was not the most peaceful in the world, but from what I could find, it doesn't appear that Pat Peterson's beef is with Cliff Kingsbury as much as it's with a little bit of Kyler Murray and a whole lot of the former GM there. So again, I don't know the Patrick Peterson. I think, if we were doing this way, we call him the risky pick, right? So I think you'd rather go after a guy like Justin Simmons or a guy like Julian Blackmon. I do think that Julian Blackmon is my preferred option here. For me, the best bet is to move Quan Martin back to the slot and bring in a veteran free agent while you continue to develop Percy Butler in the background, or potentially target a high round draft pick to full-time fill in that slot in 2025 if needed. As far as taller receivers go, and I'm talking above 6'1", the tallest receiver on the Commander roster right now comes in at 6'1", and using tight ends or the running backs more effectively could actually improve your red zone offense, but I think you also want some height if you can. And I think the top name you have to talk about when you're talking about a taller receiver in the free agent market is Mike Williams. 6'4", turns 30 in October, was recently released by the Los Angeles Chargers because he's coming off of an ACL injury. He did suffer the ACL in September. Typical time frame on an ACL is 10 to 12 months. So in theory, he could be back by training camp, could be back by preseason, should be back during the season. I will tell you that pretty much any receiver that tore their ACL will tell you that first year back is really not that great. And really it's the second year back. So at the same time, that kind of takes a little bit of a polish off the shine there. 23 red zone targets in 2021 was the most he had in his career so far. 9 of those were catches. 3 of them were drops. 5 of those were touchdowns. So, I wouldn't exactly call him a prolific red zone option, but he's 6'4", certainly taller than anybody else. There's also Tyler Boyd, 6'2". He's been described as a big slot, turns 30 in November, has played 120 games in 8 seasons in the NFL. And then Michael Thomas, 6'3", turned 31 in March, so he's already 31. But he hasn't been consistently healthy in 2019. I think if I was going to go with any of those options, I would probably roll the dice on Mike Williams because 6'2", Tyler Boyd, certainly taller than anybody else in the room, but that's, I'm looking 6'3" or higher. The problem with the NFL draft here is they do have, or the draft class does have 13 receivers on PFF's big board that are 6'3" or taller. 9 of them are ranked in the top 95. So if the Washington Commanders really want that tall receiver and they don't go after a guy like Mike Williams, if you're going to draft a guy that's 6'3" or taller, you're probably going to have to do it within your first 100 picks. I did not do that, obviously, in my mock draft, which is why we still have that opening. So we'll have to see how those needs and those options kind of weigh on the Washington Commanders. So there's our mock draft Monday. So we filled in a lot of holes preemptively, and this is why organizations do mock drafts, is kind of try to figure out where they need to fill holes in free agency versus wait for the draft. Maybe you see a couple moves. Maybe you see Mike Williams come in. And, look, I don't know how realistic Mike Williams is for the Washington Commanders and how much money he's going to want. That was part of the, I don't want to say problem, but the Chargers tried getting him to take less money. He didn't want it, so they released him. But, Ian Rappaport says he's visiting the Panthers, Jets, and Steelers. What the chances are of him getting out of those visits, I don't know. How interested the Washington Commanders really are as well, I don't know. And if they even see the taller receiver as an issue. But I know a lot of people are talking about it. I certainly would like to have a taller receiver on the roster if possible. But so those are some options. So that's Mock Draft Monday here today. Tomorrow, come back. We are going to talk to some more players. So we will have some more insight and knowledge on who these guys are and what they are coming here to do. We will also talk about some of the press conferences that we had last week. In the meantime, if you have questions or comments, just throw them in the YouTube comment section or text me directly by becoming a Locked On Commanders Insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. Don't forget to check out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever 24/7 live streaming sports channel on YouTube. As always, thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day every day. Thanks for coming through on a consistent basis like you do. Until we speak again, please be safe, be kind, and I'll see you next time for another episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.